I wasn't at that meeting, so I obviously have no recommended changes. But if I could just have a motion to approve the minutes. Somebody wanted to put that forward.
I think that is.
Cindy saw it, that's great. To approve the minutes. All in favor? Okay, for Brian, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so to approve the minutes, all in favor? Any opposed? Or was that an opposed or just a delayed approval? Okay, good, thank you. All right. Item number 3, public comments. I don't think we have any member of the public here today. So we'll just move on to section 4, subcommittee reports. I thought we would just run through just very briefly an update. I can say that for the Business Summit Working Group. So just to do a recap, we did find a keynote speaker, the counselor Nanaimo, who has spoken about the circular economy. Actually, maybe just to do a recap, the Business Summit, our hope was to have a keynote speaker. The agenda also included dialogue for business owners. The theme is circular economy. We thought that this is relevant in relation to what the Rural Islands Economic Forum is doing, in addition to the Bowen Island OCP, where the committee does have direction to incorporate a circular economy component to the OCP work. So if the Business Summit, inviting all of the businesses together to explore, to introduce what a circular economy is, to explore then how it is relevant to each individual business. Lorraine, Steph, and I have been working on it. We found a keynote speaker, which is really great, a counselor from Nanaimo, who's been very active in this space. We also got a confirmation for the dialogue as well, for an individual to lead the dialogue. We were looking at hosting it at the new community center in order to keep our costs to a minimum. However, as we know with the community center, the launch date seems to always be a little bit in flux, and erring on the side of caution. I think we're looking to then, while we had originally earmarked it for mid-November, I think we're now looking to do it in the new year. Steph had a great idea of maybe doing it in March, sort of post the official launch in February. And just as businesses are getting geared up for the summer, to maybe do the Business Summit in March. So that is where we are right now. I think in terms of just socializing the idea of a circular economy, because it is a little bit complex. Lorraine did a great job at drafting an article for the Undercurrent. We're in the process of just maybe doing 2 installments to an article in the Undercurrent to introduce what is a circular economy. I would still suggest maybe we do that article later on in the fall, and then a little bit more specific information in the new year as we get closer to the Business Summit. So that is the latest update. So we're continuing on, we're marching on. Are there any questions from any members of the committee?
My one thought would be to hold it, if we want to stick after the, the holiday launch, to have it in as early as possible in the beginning of March before school break, and things are really ramping up.
Yeah.
With spring, and if the weather is good,
That's a good point. Okay. Thanks, Jody. All right, moving on to the next subcommittee, policy development. Cooper, would you be able to provide us a bit of an update?
I don't think so if you can't hear me.
Oh,
So,
right, we don't have audio, okay.
does he want to, okay, I've got a solution. Does he want a phone and just on speakerphone? Do people, yeah, if you want to.
Is that something we can do?
You try now, Cooper. I will let Brian say anything. Brian knows a ringer.
Well, maybe I could just provide a little bit of an update, and then if Cooper's audio works, we can get Cooper's comments as well. Just as a refresh, the subcommittee with respect to policy development was tasked with 5 things. We were to look at the municipal and regional district tax legislation, and just as a reminder, that provides upwards of 3% on the cost of accommodation to used for tourism, marketing, and projects. And then since 2018, it also permits those funds to be used for affordable housing. Number 2, we were to look at the use of possibly the use of public lands for commercial purposes. Number 3, look at a policy supporting local businesses. Number 4, look at short-term rental policies. And as a reminder, of course, council has already dealt with that matter by virtue of opting into the legislation that restricts the number of short-term rentals on Bowen Island. And then finally, number 5 was the official community plan review, looking at that from the economic development lens. So over the course of the summer, Lorraine had looked at a number of possible funding sources with respect to helping to pay for infrastructure that might be generated by economic development, such as tourism. She's looked at tourist tax, possibility of destination marketing fees, fundraising events, as well as public-private partnerships. I think the concern that we have as a committee as a result of some of that investigation is, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we would certainly like to have some direction from council as to whether or not there's any appetite for these potential funding sources. Obviously, tourism tax is a big issue and would certainly need full public consultation as well as provincial support. And similarly, with respect to public-private partnerships, also potentially contentious. As I said, before we spend too much time on those funding sources, it would be useful to have some direction or indication from council as to whether it should be pursued further. We also, and Cooper had raised this as a concern, some of the funding that's currently available, such as through the MRDT and some of its related funding initiatives. There's a resort community or a resort municipality initiative whereby there are provincial funds provided to municipalities that not only have opted into the MRDT, but are also designated as resort communities. So there are monies available. However, I think the concern is, once again, is there an appetite on Bowen in terms of being designated as a resort community, including whatever implications that designation may have? So those are some of the things that we've looked at to date. Needless to say, we also have to look more closely at the current version of the official community plan in terms of what does it mean with respect to economic development on the island, whether or not we're going to be looking at it to recommend certain types of land use changes. Those are all things that we are looking at. We obviously have to meet further to continue some of these discussions, but the initial concerns to date are just what sort of funding sources should we be looking at, and also what is the local appetite with respect to designation as a resort community. I'm not sure if Cooper had anything to add to that.
Can you hear me at all? Am I coming through, Steph?
Yeah, sorry, Cooper, we can't hear you.
I can hear you, Cooper, but
Anyone on the Zoom
And
call
in the
can hear,
chat.
but they don't have sound turned
No,
on.
I've got nothing to add.
So
Yeah, certainly being
can
a
I?
resort municipality, that would be a designation coming from the province.
Yeah.
And I guess when we also look at funding opportunities too, now that we're in election, we know that, the landscape could look quite different come the end of October than it is today. But I think that's a good point just to, direct to council, is there a role for the Community Economic Development Committee to do some of that research, to provide some of that information and recommendation back to council? Recognizing that already staff is working on a lot of funding models and other ways of generating revenue and accessing government funds.
I can provide some feedback because I work on this all the time too. The resort municipality, whatever resort community municipality tax, that has been closed for a few years. And I have had conversations with the Ministry of Tourism, Arts, Culture and Sport. They are in a holding pattern, obviously, because of that, but for the last couple of years, that's just been in a holding pattern. And I know that they were also looking at the MRDT because they recently did almost a year's worth of engagement over that policy. So, I mean, I'm fairly involved in that because of my position. Also, I was involved with the 2020 MRD process with the previous planner. The MRDT is the only funding that has ever been set up and designated to support tourism. And as you noted, in 2018, they added the ability for online platform, booking platform MRDT to go towards affordable tourism. So when we did the application, the idea was to share it between tourism and affordable housing, and Tourism Bowen Island supported that. Unfortunately, the process was very rushed and it didn't go through at the time. I just presented to council Tourism Bowen Island's visitor report. And during that process, I also said that we want to encourage council to go forward with the MRDT based on the previous plan. Tourism Bowen Island has no core funding. We have used up all of our recent COVID grants. And so this is the one only possibility that we have, for instance, to move initiatives forward that we've outlined in our tourism plan. So just you guys have been working on that, but we should probably have a conversation and I can fill in and things like that.
So we'll have the conversation with Jody offline. I guess the other thing is that certainly with respect to short stay accommodation, it has been diminished as a result of the opting into the legislation. And I think as a committee, we should also consider what our position might be in terms of through the official community plan review, recommending the possibility of construction of actual short-term stay accommodation such as hotels or motels, as the case may be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there are any concerns about that from a preliminary perspective that we should be discussing.
I think that's a great idea in terms of making recommendations to the OCP committee for sure. I just wanted to say too, Cooper has participated, through the chat function. Thanks, Cooper. And I'm just going to read this out loud. An extremely concise form, the main pathways to access federal or provincial funding programs to bridge the gap between local tax base and external strains like tourism are the MRDT and being declared an official resort municipality. We have no short-term accommodation stock to generate a meaningful MRDT and have made efforts to suppress it further. And as a community, we have not shown an interest in viewing ourselves as a resort community. So both major options are mostly off the table. But, I think that's, good observation. And, I think too, kind of circling back to see where we go with the OCP. And, there may be opportunities through the OCP to create more short-term rental and therefore then revisit the MRDT as an option. So it sounds like this is something for the committee keep thinking about and keep seeing where this could be leveraged. Of course, working with Jody and further lobbying efforts, both with government and then internally here at the municipality.
Through the chair.
I'm wondering if, I know that Lorraine also spoke of, has also spoken of wanting more council direction. Would there be value in putting together a briefing note on these options and just sending it to council with a recommendation that they receive it for information or receive it for comment or somehow see if we can get a sense of their radar?
Okay, is that a
Possibly.
motion? Is that a
It
motion
wouldn't happen today, but
No.
something to think
in the
about.
future?
Yeah, maybe next meeting.
Sure,
For
why
that
don't we
folks.
work on something in the meantime in terms of what that briefing topic contain, what direction, specific direction. we're looking.
That's an action.
Well, thank you both, Ryan and Cooper. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, I will move on to item 4.3, Newcomers Guide Working Group. Brian, and I'll ask you to.
So we're at draft number 4 on
Okay.
that. And it's been largely an updating exercise. Took time off over the summer, but I think that we're poised to have it done. And I'm hoping that it might coincide with the opening of the community center so that we can update all the wonderful facilities that are in that building into the Newcomers Guide. So,
That's great.
so we'll be scheduling another meeting, the subcommittee, to finish that off.
Sarah, did you want to add anything to that?
Yes, we are going to be working with a graphic designer, a local person to put together, because I'm not a graphic designer. So she'll be able to make it all very professional, and we're in conversations with her now, and hope to meet with her in the next few weeks to sort of work out her terms and that sort of thing.
So there is motivation to get this done because of the budget ending.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mhm.
to pay her.
So is there a date then that we need to have it done?
Well, the end of the year really is the.
Okay.
But I like this community center coinciding
Mhm.
idea as well.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee in regards to the Newcomers Guide? Hearing none, then we'll move on to item 4.4, Digital App Working Group. Councillor Jurgensen. Could ask you for an update. Oh, well, right, sorry. We're still, sorry, apology. My update is there is somewhat movement, but no major update at this time. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Are there any questions for Councillor Jurgensen? Hearing none, just opening up, are there any other subcommittee items, discussion points that we want to touch upon?
I had thought about OCP subcommittee, but then realized it's under the policy group. So wonderful to hear that you guys are working on that.
Great. Okay. Moving on to section 5 updates, 5.1 with the province.
So Wendy's not here, but I asked her for an update and this sent me a plan. We have entered into the interim period, meaning there is a transitional phase where decision-making may be delayed and essential functions continue until new leadership is established.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Done.
Yeah. We're in election mode. What can we say? Okay, sounds fair. If we can, then moving on to 5.2, Tourism Bowen Island. Jody, I could
Hello.
hand everything over to you.
Tourism Bowen Island operates the Visitor Information Center on behalf of the municipality from the Victoria Day weekend until Labor Day. So we were busy during the summer doing that. I presented to council the formal written report and we presented on Monday. You can find that report on our website, or maybe it can be included with the agenda, with the minutes when they go out. So our stats are very similar to what they were last year. Normally I don't do the report till later, so I can try to get the ferry stats to see, because I know there was a lot of vocalization about capacity issues, the ferry. Why BC Ferries did the same schedule as they did last year. It didn't work last year. I'm not sure why they used the same schedule again in 2024. So, so yes, there was lots of delays and a lot of locals expressing frustration. And without a doubt, of course, the summer is the busy, weather's good. People are out on holidays. It's the busy visitor season. And so a lot of expression about frustration, often seeing it as visitors causing impact, which is not necessarily always the case, as we see with paving and development and things like that. So I don't have the stats to do a comparison to sort of estimate what were the visitors in it. So I don't know where that lands this year, but just generally speaking, our numbers are the same. As we all know, we spent a lot of time doing the community-based responsible tourism visitation plan. When I did the presentation the other day, one of the counselors said, well, is this going to be a committee? Is the committee going to work on this? And I said I was part of the ECDEV committee. So, and I know at some point, Steph, you had said that maybe this is something, I don't know what that looks like. But I want to say from my position, you know, we've done a lot of the work. And unfortunately, we're a very small nonprofit. So we've kind of got this really good framework. We're wanting to do community-based responsible tourism. A lot of the frustrations that people are saying, these are things that have been expressed before, they are in the plan. So I from my position, feel frustrated. We've got this plan. Tourism has always been sort of identified on the ECDEV committee as a key economic and social driver. And yet we always run into the situation where, okay, so we kind of know this, we've kind of identified this, but how do we action anything? So my frustration from my position is we don't have the ability to do that. We don't have the MRPT, which is the only kind of source that is supposed to go towards tourism. And so that led me to bringing up, this is where we are. We can't go any further with this the way that we are at the moment. So yeah, so that's kind of where we are. And so we're formally asking that we really want to move the MRD forward. We support the previous plan. Obviously, it would have to be updated. So that's where we are. And we were also asking council, we would want to move this responsible tourism plan forward. And I know it was shared with the community members. I don't know how many people have looked at it, but certainly looking guidance, support on how do we try to move some things forward, how to action them. We are hoping we're trying to get organized for a community engagement session in the fall. That's one of our initiatives. One of the initiatives is set up a community advisory committee. So we're hoping that will come as well. We're hoping to do annual resident surveys. I mean, there's quite a few initiatives, but once again, our stumbling block is capacity and funding to move it forward. Yeah, so that's where we at. I've applied for 3 grants this year. I was hopeful, and the last one I got the rejection letter yesterday. So it's really hard to be in a position where you're applying for grants, you're pitting very viable, worthy causes against others or nonprofits. You know, it's the resources since COVID have gotten a lot scarcer. So that's where we are at the moment. one thing I did want to put forward, which you sort of touched on, Brian, and which we all, the municipality moved forward on Bill 35. And so that's going to come into effect November 1st. And one thing I wanted to propose towards the committee is to like monitoring that. Like that has gone into place and the idea is to hopefully create affordable housing. I think it would be worthwhile for the committee to be in some kind of position that, hey, this is what we're doing. This was the goals. And obviously it's going to take time, but over time, are we going to achieve that goals? Is that? So I just wanted to put that out there. And I think that would be a worthy initiative for the ECDEV committee to look into about how do we monitor that and track that, and are the outcomes desirable. We will try, Tourism Rhode Island will try to get feedback from our members, because we all know when things go in, there's often unintended consequences. So we want to make sure maybe this will open up more, hopefully more housing, but hopefully maybe more jobs. But it could also cause economic consequences. I know some people are already probably losing their jobs. So, but we need to track the data. I mean, obviously we want to make sure we've got data to support any kind of decisions or recommendations. I think that's me. Thank you.
I think those are great comments, and I, assume that the Housing Advisory Committee would also want to be looking at that data, and hopefully that's something that staff could compile, because I think that it's also important to have that sort of data when you're looking at the official community plan review as well, as to whether or not one is recommending rezonings, plans in order to encourage hotel type development. So I think there's a lot of people that would be interested in that monitored information.
Do you get data from BC Ferries at all in terms of the tourism side?
Yeah, so like that is linked in our responsible visitation plan. So since 2015, I think, we get a breakout. BC Ferries is pretty good. I got requested, but I haven't got the latest sort of year and a half data. But yeah, so we get the general traffic statistics. They give us a breakout for experience.
Okay.
Seniors travel free Monday to Thursday now, and school age children travel free. So they do give us those breakouts. And then based on that, using the assumption that anybody paying full fare as a visitor, it's not a perfect formula. It's not but if you track it over the years, I think it does show trends or whatever. So yeah, it's one way to measure it.
Okay.
Of course, there's now cell data and all that kind of stuff, but that's beyond our
Yeah,
capacity.
we'll have to get as well, probably.
Yeah, to monitor that.
And do you have the analysis of that?
I do.
You do.
So it could definitely be, I think I use a very simple formula to do it. But
Maybe I'll talk to you a little bit about data.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jody. Would you think, when you're looking at that extra capacity or that extra support, do you think that there could be a subcommittee brought together here to help you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure in what capacity there could be support. I think there's been a recognition over the years, and in each, like even the last community economic development plan that was done a few, tourism keeps being identified.
Yes.
And identified.
Yeah. And
we've done we've sort of updated it for a really sustainable, going towards regenerative tourism. So we've got the frameworks, we've got, how do we move it forward? So that it's the actioning that, so I don't know what kind of support or what kind of, we're certainly open to that for sure.
Well, and I'm just kind of throwing this out, like, in terms of moving it forward, as well as, doing that deep dive into the MRDT. How could it work? How could it be implemented? You know, if you think that a subcommittee here could be of support to you in doing that work, then that's something that maybe members of the CEDC could look at to give some time to help you out, and it could be a subcommittee that you could drive just to have that extra support and
Yeah,
extra help.
absolutely, absolutely. I'm not sure, I'm not how the vision would work,
Yeah.
but yeah, always more support, of course, yeah.
Okay.
But also depending if people have time and energy to do that, so.
Okay, well, maybe that's something for us to kind of think about for the next meeting, like if you wanted to maybe, I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion, kind of throw it at like a scope of work of what the subcommittee would be responsible for doing. And I think with that scope of work or further defining where you would appreciate help coming from a subcommittee, then it could just be released to the members to see if, you know, from a time and engagement point of view, if we have the capacity.
Would there be value in doing the presentation on the visitation plan?
The presentation to,
This group? It's been mentioned, but maybe like you had a nice PowerPoint for council, maybe a presentation.
yeah, I mean, I can certainly do a presentation. I've got the presentation that we did for council. I would probably, as to Kirsten's notes, I would probably update that or extend that. I could do the presentation and then maybe extend it to what we use this with, I suppose.
Yeah, maybe I think that's a great idea, Jody. I'd like to just do that presentation and then, you know, having time to reflect, how do you think a subcommittee could help you? Put that as part of the scope of work, and then that can be for our next meeting's conversation. Okay. Nice. I like
Sort of whizzing through this for the people on TV. It's linked to the Economic Development Committee page. We have a page. And Sarah will have it linked to the minutes as well.
We've also, I added on our website, there's a new resident drop down on our menu where you'll find the plan, as well as our visitor services reports. Like I said, we're hoping to do a community engagement session in the near future, if we can pull it off. So yeah, so that's a place that people can go to as well.
Great. Well, thank you. And are there any more questions for Jody? Okay, seeing none, thank you again, Jody. And moving on to the Hearth Arts on Bowen Island.
Jamie's not here. I don't have any update.
Okay. That's short and sweet.
Mhm.
Moving on to 5.4, Rural Islands Economic Partnership. Martin's not here today, but I do see, just made a note of that the AGM is virtually September 28th.
Saturday.
On Saturday. I think I saw an email saying it is open to any member if you did want to join. That would be available.
That the link is in the agenda, and also if there's anybody in the community, we did have a fairly robust contingent a couple of years ago from like housing people and food sovereignty people. So actually, we should maybe communicate this as well.
I'm assuming that Martin, of course, is
It's really
joining.
close though. Yeah. Yes, probably.
Yes.
If there aren't any more questions about Rural Islands Economic Partnership. Moving on to item 5.5, council update. Councillor Jurgensen, I know we ran into each other at UBCM. Wondering maybe if you could, again, because we're limited to typing once again in terms of the chat box, but if there is something that you could add to the chat, that would be great. In the meantime, maybe I could I'll just jump in and just say that, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with UBCM, it is a forum where local governments are able to vote on various resolutions that are put forward by other municipalities across British Columbia. It's also a time for local governments to advocate to the province on certain issues and items. So, you know, certainly Bowen Island Municipality would have met with provincial ministries advocating for our top issues. sort of recognizing, I think that got a bit of a technology limitation. Maybe we could defer this update to the next meeting.
Yes, please.
It actually will probably be more meaningful next meeting as well, post-election. That, you know, whatever was advocated, of course, to the province, obviously, we're in a bit of a holding pattern. Depending on how those meetings went and depending on the results of the election, the update then from council may be a bit more meaningful next meeting or in October.
There is, our communications team have been doing, updates on what council's been up to on our website, and we'll send a link around.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. There's no objection. Moving on to item 5.6, staff update. It over to Steph and
Okay.
Sarah as well.
Just a note that, Small Business Week is October 20th, and we've never really done anything for that as a group, and I don't have any plans or ideas to do anything about that, but I thought it's worth mentioning and perhaps thinking about. It's before our next meeting, but, maybe we'll do a bit of comms about it.
Are there advertisements?
We've done the buy local, we've never done the small business, to my knowledge. But if anyone has any ideas, you wanna send them along?
Well, maybe if I could throw out an idea. Spontaneous. I wonder if maybe a member of the CEDC maybe wants to meet with one of our small businesses and maybe even draft a short article for the undercurrent. I'll just throw that out as an idea.
I think it's a great idea.
You know, because I think an interview, or I mean, it could be one small business, it could be a few, just asking them what's top of mind for them. You know, how was the tourist season? How did the tourist season, affect their business? Most likely in a positive way, but maybe there are also some challenges as well. Asking a small business on, what does the next year look for? What does the future look like? It may be nice for a member to do that, to also highlight the work that the CEDC is doing and also maybe even planting the seed that we do have a business summit coming up early next year. So maybe I'll just throw that out as a suggestion and if anybody would like to volunteer to do that, could talk about that later.
Okay.
I don't want to put anybody on the spot, obviously. When is our next meeting? I don't know, am I jumping?
It's October 30th.
October, okay, so
After
we're
that.
meeting after that.
So, yeah, maybe we can, sniff around offline.
Yeah.
For meetings for that. Okay.
I think it'd be nice to thank them too.
Yes.
For operating and being part of the community here. I was recently listening to podcasts when I walk my dog and just being reminded that Bowen's kind of unique in the sense that we don't really have franchises or, big corporate or outside people operating. I mean, we do have some businesses that obviously come into the community. But so everybody that's running a business here, they're also a resident, they're part of the community. And when Bowen grows big and we start to have outside franchises, that's going to totally change that. Or if we get a hotel, what hotel's going to come and operate? There's going to change. It's going to change the dynamic. So, and that kind of resonated with me when I was listening to this podcast. I thought, yeah, Bowen's unique in that way. But we're growing and we're part of Metro Vancouver, and that will probably change.
Yeah, it makes me reflect the fact that we can't necessarily promote a business, but to your point, Jody, there are these sort of very common factors that we're finding community-wide that we can speak of, and maybe just meeting with a few, small local businesses sort of highlight those major themes that we find in community. Okay.
So the buy local, annual buy local campaign, we operate with partnership with Local BC. And through them, we receive digital collateral, and the season kicks off December 2nd. And that usually starts with a 7 day, 7 ways campaign, so 7 ways to support local, be like restaurants one day, shopping. In the past, this group has been quite generated ideas, but then it's sort of been communications team was just taking it on and uses that collateral and does sort of a undercurrent and digital campaign. So that's pretty much going to be in play. But again, if anyone has any ideas about buy local support for the season, we go from December to March. And that
I know that Whistler, a lot of the sorts will have it during that time, specifically promoting restaurants or have like a food type restaurant event.
Cornucopia.
Yeah, well, a cornucopia is even very specific of going to a place, but there's also the one just like eat food. I can't remember what it's called in Whistler, but each of the restaurants will have something that'll be a little bit of a discount or a set plate or something.
They have dine out.
On.
We did that last year in September.
Do we?
We did, Tourism
Okay.
Going On did.
Yeah.
Bowen Food Fest. We did Bowen Food Fest for a month. Right? But we lost our funding, so we're not doing it this year.
Well, there's the challenge is to, what are some options to get funding back into the hands of tourism?
And then I did want to maybe not, if we don't recommend now, maybe socialize the idea for later consideration, a possibility of asking council if we could if we decide to move the summit to the spring, then that's 2024 funding that's sitting there. If we could possibly reallocate some of that funding to doing graphic design for economic development plan. Think about that. Since we've engaged someone to do the newcomer guide. We thought maybe if we have extra funds, we can.
The fund amount for the summit would be significantly more than the graphic design, right?
Hopefully, yes.
I would think, yeah.
So that, if we're not gonna spend that money, if we don't spend that money this year, which is what it's looking like, it's just gonna go away. So if we ask council if they can reallocate it, we can take some of it.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just gonna suggest this for the business summit, maybe some of those funds can be spent in advance to the end of the year.
Okay.
And you know, what the cost would be to do a graphic design, you know, I'm not quite sure what the cost of that would be.
We have $1,500 allocated for the newcomer guide.
Yeah,
I think that might have involved some writing though as well when we had that budgeted for Heather Pretty who did the original. We've got something in the chat.
so from Councillor Jurgensen, some money can also be spent doing the accessibility work on the newcomer guide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. And these I need to do up. Okay,
Okay, thank you, Cooper.
that's our quorum and that's I think the end of.
So so Steph, just for clarification, under new business, are you asking for us to, or just a conversation piece?
Just a time buffer.
Okay.
In case something came up.
All right. So then moving on to item 7, then?
That's it. Those are just information items for people.
Yeah. Information items, the council strategic plan and community economic development plan.
Always linked there.
So is there. And we'll just, items 8, is there a question period if there's?
There's no public.
No, there's no public today. All right, so our next meeting is October 30th at 3 p.m. I know I'm available. I'll be there. Hopefully, you know, for those who can make it to council chambers, that would be great. Hopefully next time around, we will have the audio working.
That was bizarre.
Yeah, well, you know, technology, we love it. And then on the very odd occasion, we struggle with it. But thank you, everybody, for your patience and for your participation and for putting time towards this committee. We really appreciate it. On that note, should we do a motion to adjourn the meeting? Jody, thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? None?